All right, and we are back for another episode of Breaking and Entering the Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Enoch. I know we used to do that the piece at the end. I don't know why it came right here at the beginning.
I'm your other host, Blair.
I appreciate you going along with the piece.
Hey, we're partners, okay?
We are partners, and we're talking about what?
Commitment?
Commitment. That is the hot topic today. Commitment. So,
What kind of
episode is this? This could be several different episodes. This could be, if we're gonna go.
The one thing I don't think it is confirmation bias.
Could definitely make it a confirmation
bias. You could
make
anything confirmation bias.
I know it's definitely either field or study, obviously, or B.
Or B, yeah.
I think this is more of a field or study because I don't. Just from the prep work of this podcast, I feel like we're not necessarily gonna go too super deep into us.
The 2 minutes and 30 seconds of prep work.
Yes. Hey, when you got it, you know? Okay, so for the audience who aren't familiar with field of study episodes, what are field of study episodes?
Field of study is where we, through one mechanism or another, kind of go down a path, a topic that one of us has experience or some kind of knowledge in, or sometimes it's just innate knowledge, that you didn't necessarily study it, but you just kind of gained it over time. So we're diving into a topic and kind of exploring what it means generally and also probably what it means to us.
Yes. Okay, cool.
I think he was grading me. Did you see that face?
Yeah, I did. You got like a Georgia Tech A on that.
Oh, what? Georgia Tech? Georgia Tech A?
Georgia Tech A, man. Georgia Tech A. That's a compliment.
Yeah, it is.
No one gets a Georgia Tech A.
No.
You got like the two kids who sit in the front. They got the Georgia Tech A, and the rest of us
and
are
they've
screwed.
never had a girlfriend.
They've never had anything.
They've never had a friend.
They've never had a friend. COVID has been their life. They were like, oh. They were like, oh, so they're like, social distance is what I live on.
I know.
I'm kidding. I was one of those kids in college a lot. So.
Okay.
But before we jump down into the topic, spill, like, subscribe, rate, comment, share. Like I said, we're going to be talking about commitment today. So, what is commitment to you? What do we know about commitment?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have some expertise and you can kind of tell us what you know about commitment and help us understand it better.
Yeah, no doubt. Help us understand how to do it better, too.
Yeah. Committing is hard. Committing is hard. It's not an easy thing. And I think that might be the root problem of commitment is that we see it as an easy thing, at least from the jump street. And we're committing too early without really having evaluated our options.
Yeah.
Or even what does commitment look like? So,
what all does it entail?
What all does it entail? What does commitment entail? What is commitment?
What is commitment? I think somewhat, this can even be unconsciously, but commitment is when we make a decision to elevate the importance of something to us, to the point where it takes precedence over many other things. And that's vague kind of deliberately because there's always going to be certain things that are going to take precedence over things that you commit to. Even just like biologically are going to. So like, I commit to do this. I've committed to do this podcast, right? We have made commitments to each other, to Peggy, that we're all going to do this podcast. Thank you. And we've done a really good job of doing that. We haven't, been late yet. We release one podcast every week, and that's trust me, we've fought to do that. It's been difficult.
There's been effort.
And the thing is, in order to do that, we've had to give up other things. I've had to give up going out like with other friends or with having dinner with my family.
Wait, you have other friends?
Let's not talk about this right now.
I'm kidding. Of course, you have other friends. No, yeah, but you're correct. So when we're looking at commitment, I feel like most people, they don't think of commitment in this grand general scheme of thing.
I actually wasn't done yet. So
excuse me.
The problem is right. There could be an emergency or something though, right? So what if like my mom gets in the car wreck? Then I don't care if we're in the middle of a podcast. I'm leaving. Like nothing.
And I'm following you.
Yes, exactly. And that's commitment to our friendship at that point. And I don't know, to the friendship you have with my mom as well. So
your mom's great.
Yeah. So that's my point. Is like it's elevated over many things in your life, to where you're giving those up. But there are always going to be things that like, if they happen, then yes, there are some things that are still like going to take priority over it. But generally, it's a higher priority than many other things in your life. Is what a commitment is. I'll go back into what you were saying. I apologize.
I forgot all of that. So we're just gonna move on to the next. No, I just didn't. Or did I?
He never forgets. Never does.
So when it comes down to commitment, a lot of times, like I said, you described it in a very very general, like this is the definition of commitment,
right?
Which was great. Gave us a very good overview of it. But like majority of the time, people are thinking about committing to like a relationship. The partnering of this and that, when we're thinking about intimacy, like commitment, like don't cheat, don't like having trust, having loyalty, like committing to really at the end of the day, committing to monogamy or committing to open communication.
Open communication.
Like that if you are like that, if you're going to be with another person, we're thinking of like it's communicated, like and both parties agree. So like that's commitment as well.
Right.
So making it like work in those kind of ways. That's usually what most people think about commitment.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's funny that you mentioned cheating because I feel like that's like the thing almost at the end of the journey. You had to go through like a bunch of small things and not actually maintain that commitment to each other in order to get to the point where somebody actually like ended up cheating. That's a long list of failures between the two of you before that actually happens.
Okay, explore that. Okay. Because what if you cheat early in a relationship? It was day number 2 of commitment, and I was out.
Then you never had a commitment. That's
okay,
what it,
fair.
That's what it is.
So you're saying it's a long list of failures.
Yeah.
I'm interested in your perspective on that.
So, in my opinion, when I've had this conversation with a few other people, you don't just have like big mistakes or big like travesties between two people. There were a bunch of little things that either you let go, you're like, do I want to be the nag right now? Do I want to be whatever? And I mean, there's something to be said about that, right? Because you don't want to like make a fight over everything. Like there's some things that you have to accept about the person that you're going to be with, and there are other things that you actually have to like pick the battle and be like, this makes me feel terrible. And if you are committed to me, if we're committed to each other, then we have to like find a way to overcome this together. And so there were a bunch of little things that you either never even talked about, which is kind of what you're saying about like open communication. I think in order to be committed, you also have to commit to sharing how you feel with this person. That's the only way that you can actually start to overcome things together, is by having this openness between you of what each of you feel, and then you can overcome. And that, frankly, so I keep taking it back to us because, I mean, we have a commitment to this podcast. We've had a commitment to the friendship, and ultimately how we grew is we shared our feelings, like about many different things, and we overcome each of those things. So it's kind of like you either fail, or you win. And you are either going down and you're going to crash and burn, or you're going to keep soaring higher and actually growing together. There is no in between. That's actually what commitment does for you. It either crashes and burns you, or it keeps you flying.
So when you're looking at commitment, and so it's like, okay, from just hearing that, it seems like if two people are committed to each other, then they're gonna win.
Yeah.
What about or are there never any times where two people are committed and they lose?
I don't think so.
I mean, is that your honest
I really
opinion?
don't think so. I mean, all right, debate me. What do you think?
Well, because I think commitment is also different for both parties. So you have to think about, like, because I think commitment, the basis of it is out of your communication style. And so if the two people communicate very differently, they can have even an agreement. They can say, both of them can say what they feel, but they both heard two different interpretations. And so it's like they're on the same team in their minds. They're on the same team in their minds, but like in actual physicality, they're not on the same team. And it's like not both parties. One of them might not go out and do something that's drastic as like cheating, but it can be that it literally you're still crashing because it's like the little things that you're doing. It's like in the communication, just it's not there because you're doing something and you're thinking that you're communicating on one end and you're doing exactly what that other person wants, but you're actually not at all. And then the same thing is happening on the other end, and you're thinking it's like literally, even though you both do have that level of commitment and you believe that you understood, it was like it's a disconnect there.
So I would argue that if you are at a point where you are not effectively communicating between each other, then you are not having actually open communication, and therefore you are not actually committed to each other.
So
because
what is open communication then?
Okay. So, well, and my point in that is you actually have to be mature enough to go and try to figure out, like, this person's meaning behind their words. You can't just take it at the surface like you do, like, frankly, with most people, probably. Because this person is actually important enough. They deserve your energy to try to actually figure out how what you are feeling is actually connecting with what they are feeling. So my point is, if you're just like, oh, you said this, I say this, okay, great, let's do this, then I don't know if that's actually enough. I think you need to be like, okay, but I care about you. So tell me exactly, like, when you say this, does it mean like this? Is that more so? Or is that where we kind of like connect?
I just wanted a sandwich. How did we get here? That's what I feel like the key.
I thought he said pizza.
I thought he said pie.
So that's my point.
But how many people do actually communicate like that? Like, I mean, really, just think about how many people are actually in the moment when feelings and all this stuff.
In the moment. That's where it comes back to. I think, so you're saying how many people, and you have a great point. I don't think anybody does this, but that's also why we have a bunch of failures of relationships. Like, a lot of them. Even the ones that are still in relationships, that doesn't mean that they're not failing, right? There's a bunch of things that look happy that really aren't. And even like both people, they may think that they're happy or that the other person is happy, and it's not quite to the level that they think it is. And I think it actually, you literally said in the moment, and that brings me back to like that actually is the point of these relationships. That's the point of actually committing. I think when you commit, you actually like are making a decision to, when you come home from the end of the day or whatever, nothing else is on your mind when you are in this moment with this person. And you're doing your best to actually like connect in that moment.
I would say it's the opposite.
Oh, okay. Tell me.
Because it's almost like you're committed. This is not exactly what you said, but it's almost like what it felt like you're saying is that you're committed to this person when they're around you. I feel like commitment is when that person is not around you. So it's just like when that person is not in the room, what are you doing? Are you thinking about them? Are you being loyal to them? Are you, doing the things that are you being the person who that person thinks you are when they're not around? So it's almost like that it's like that locker room talk. Like when people say, "Oh, this is how men talk in the locker room."
Yep.
But like to me it's like if you're a good man who respects women,
Yes.
you would talk that way in the locker room as well.
Right.
It wouldn't just be like, I'm not like, oh, I'm in the locker room, I'm this dude, but then when I go out in the world, I'm a different person. Like, no, you're the same person throughout. So who are you? Or are you just full of shit? Like, it's one or the other.
Right.
So it's like, that's to me, commitment is when that person who you're committed to is not around.
Sure.
It's easy to be like, oh, I love you when you're around. Oh, you're great. Oh, this and that. Like, that's very, very simple. But then it's like when that person is not there, then are you truly like loving them and showing them the love that they would want?
Yeah. So it's easy to say I love you. It's a different story to actually put it into action. Mm-hmm. So I think that's actually it can be easy if you're in your flow point, right? Mm-hmm. But otherwise, you probably got to work at it. And to what you're saying about commitment, I completely agree. But I think commitment is multifaceted. I think that is one aspect of commitment. When who you are committed to is not in the room, who are you? Everyone is going to change somewhat. That's okay. I'm not expecting you to be the exact same person with every person that you're around. We have different parts of ourselves that different people bring out around us. That's okay. But are you bringing out a vastly different person who actually has like different values, different morals? Or are those actually being maintained when you're away from the person that you have this commitment to? And then there's also the commitment that you make when they are in the room with you. I think it's both. I don't think that commitment only exists when you're not with them. I think it is always.
So how are you committed to a person when because you're just in that moment? Is that okay?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
No, and it's kind of like how commitment is going to manifest itself in different ways when you're not in their presence versus when you're in their presence.
Okay.
And so I think we're like mainly focusing on commitment as in reference to relationships, but you can also be committed to yourself, right?
Yeah.
So there are certain things where you're like, well, I could do this. I could eat the butter pecan ice cream, or if I actually have this goal to lose weight, to like gain muscle or whatever it is that my goal is, part of you actually committing to yourself is making the decisions to maybe not have that butter pecan ice cream tonight, and maybe to have like the extra broccoli.
I like broccoli, buddy.
I know.
With the look at your face, it's like broccoli.
Depends on how it's made. And do you like raw broccoli?
I do eat raw broccoli.
Yes, Peggy, I'm with you.
Steaming takes out some of the nutrients.
It also makes it palatable.
So y'all out here eating, for the taste, and I'm eating for the health,
It's not healthy after you choke on it, though.
I've not choked on broccoli, okay? I didn't say I always eat broccoli. I don't just go I don't go in the store and just be like, oh, I'm just going to get some raw broccoli.
Sorry, I'm literally picturing Enoch like in the store being like...
You do that with grapes. You don't do that with broccoli.
You selling grapes?
You've never stolen a grape out of a grocery store.
I think my mom has, but
See, your mom is good people.
Oh Lord! All right, yes, she is. Sorry, that I said, oh Lord. Yes, she's good people.
Okay, so why do we struggle so much with commitment? Apparently, someone in the background has a lot to say about it.
Hey, you got a microphone.
Nope. She has a microphone.
You have a microphone.
The audience wants to hear what you have to say. Opinion.
I ain't got no opinion.
Give me like a 20-second spiel. Give me the Peggy words for today.
You're not on camera. It should just be your voice.
It's just your voice.
I have nothing to say.
You always got something to say, Peggy.
Y'all struggle with commitment. Men struggle with commitment. People struggle with commitment. So why is
Okay, because it sounds like you backtracked a little bit. Sounds like you want to say no, men struggle with it, but I don't want to say it like that. So I'm gonna say people struggle with commitment.
We all
struggle with commitment. Okay, we're both men. Why do men struggle with commitment?
Yeah.
So that's actually something that I wanted to address that I kind of mentioned in the last podcast, where we were talking about our president and we were saying what kind of psychological tendencies and traits he may have, and we mentioned narcissism. Mm-hmm. And so at that time, I defined narcissism as having an elevated sense of self-worth. And what I neglected to kind of further say, because it's kind of an innate thought within me, is what lay behind that elevated self-worth, or what lies actually behind that elevated self-worth. And I think that is perceived self-inadequacy. I think any time, so I used to have different definitions for like cocky and conceited, but I think we've all seen the person. I think most of us know the difference when we see it between cocky and conceited. And I think that the person that is conceited always has some underlying perceived self-inadequacy. Like, they actually have very low self-esteem, and because of that, they are compensating for it by putting themselves out there as something greater, or what they see as greater than actually what they currently are. And so all of that to kind of go back and say that I think one of the reasons that men have issues with committing is perceived self-inadequacy. We don't necessarily think that we are good enough to give women everything that they actually deserve sometimes. And because of that, we can run, we can shut off and shut down, and we can deviate and kind of hide. Those are all kind of different behaviors that I've seen from men. And Peggy and I were talking about this kind of behind the scenes, because I actually wanted her real opinion that she would not give on air. Mm-hmm. And she was just saying that I think there are differences between, because both men and women have commitment issues, right? But we were saying that women tend to have commitment issues because of something that they feel they aren't getting in the relationship, in the home, whether that is like an emotional visibility between them and their partner, or even something physical. But typically it really is more on the emotional and like psychological, mental appreciation aspect of it. Whereas for men, personally, and I mentioned that in many movies, like we if you're looking for it, then you see it over and over again. And I think that a lot of movies that have issues of a commitment are kind of designed with this in mind. But I also think that even though it is a typical movie thing, it's still something that we see in the real world. And that is that when men are having commitment issues, it's typically because they shut things down because they're afraid of revealing their full self to this other person. They're afraid that it's not going to be received or appreciated, embraced, and loved. And so before we get to that point of being able to be rejected, they move on and they reject you. So that I think is actually, with both sexes, one of the biggest reasons why we all have commitment issues.
I agree. I was like,
second time in a row.
Yeah.
Enoch is speechless.
What's your it's funny. What's your defense mechanism to commitment of choice? I know I'm a shut down type of guy. Like
Why you gotta put it in me?
I'm a shut down type of guy. So I'll when I feel inadequate and stuff like that,
You feel inadequate?
I mean, it hasn't happened much lately, but I'm kidding. No, of course I feel inadequate. Of course, it happens all the time. That's just anything, because it's like the the little weird idiosyncrasies that you have. Only you know that.
You just pulled out the word that like.
Yeah. Good Will Hunting.
Good Will Hunting.
But like those, you have them.
Robin Williams.
Well, great film. But you have those little idiosyncrasies, and they're your little secret. Like, and it's nothing bad about it, but it's just like I don't want to say you're ashamed of them, but you're not quite comfortable with letting the world know that you have them.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so when you do share them, and then specifically if you share them and they're not perceived in a way that you wanted them to perceive,
right.
even if it's a small one,
right.
like if it's like you're a really big anime geek, you reveal just Dragon Ball Z, which is like the more popular one, and then she
like the baby.
It's the baby anime.
Entry,
You went deep down in it, and then she rejects that. It's like, okay, well, I'm definitely not gonna let her know some of the crazy Japanese ones that I'm addicted to. Like, and so you just feel that inadequacy, and it does, like, for me personally, like when stuff like that happens, those little idiosyncrasies, and it's like I can't feel like myself around you.
Yeah.
It's just like then I start shutting down, and I start becoming the person who I think you want me to be, the person the person it's very dangerous. The person who you think, who I think you're gonna accept, and like I mean, definitely did a lot more when I was younger,
right?
But like now I'm just at the point where like, hey, you gonna like my if you don't like anime, then we just gonna have this disagreement, and I'm just gonna like my anime.
So here's my question: do you think either person can truly commit if they aren't revealing those idiosyncrasies, especially like major ones within themselves?
Probably. I mean, 99% no. 99%, but that 1% yes. It depends upon how in depth the relationship is.
Okay.
Like, I think it goes back to like when we had the podcast on loyalty. Like when it gets to that point where it's just bigger than words can describe. Like you don't have to reveal every idiosyncrasy. You can just kind of like. It's like when to speak and when not to speak. When to reveal and when not to reveal. It becomes innate at that point. Because it's like, I mean, there's no time where you're going to know 100% of the person. You can get close to it, but like to know 100% of it it's never, I mean, in the ideal world of love, yeah, you would know 100% of them, but
right.
I don't think in reality.
That's how you're one.
Yeah.
I think there's also something to be said for gently showing yourself to other people, right? Because there is definitely a point where you can come on too strong and show way too much of yourself way too quickly. I think you have to allow people to have I'm going to say the word negative energy, but I don't mean that in the form of like sad or angry or whatever. I mean negative in the way that your positive can balance it, right? Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay, good. Because he's still
I'm
giving
confused.
me this weird face.
It's more, you're just talking about balance, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like
I think use a different.
It's space. Okay, it's space.
Yeah.
So like, you cannot move forward until this person first moves back. If you move forward while they're still there, you're going to crush them.
Okay.
And so that's what I'm saying. You have to be gauging of like, is this person giving you the space to actually give them more of yourself? And you have to be gauging that, because if you do it too much, then you crush them. And if you don't do it enough, then you actually can't commit. Either person is what I would say.
So it's a dance.
It is a dance. Everything's a dance. Martial arts is a dance. Kung Fu Panda. Anyways, moving on.
It's been like a solid 3 podcasts without it, but we had to bring it back.
Had to bring it back.
Okay, that's very interesting that you put it and you phrase it that way. So I think something that Peggy was bringing up is that it seems like when it comes to commitment, it's more of a male thing than it is a female thing.
I think it's both. All right. Okay,
well, we're males, so like instead of like why would let's just try to see her perspective. Why would she? Why do? I mean, I don't know. She doesn't. She's not going to speak. We're gonna have to assume her perspective.
I didn't say that.
That's not what she said.
I'm not saying it's all men.
I didn't say all men, but you feel like it's more of an innate male thing.
Yeah.
So, like I said, why? Because I do feel like it is an innate male thing as well. Like,
Okay.
I actually agree with that perspective that men have a commitment problem for the most part. Oh, did you have some? Okay.
No, I'm waiting.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
waiting. Develop this thought.
So, I mean, there's obviously a biological perspective to it as well. But I mean, at this point, we're in 2020. Like, I think that we're smart enough and we're more evolved enough so that we can kind of like, we can almost like.
Sorry. For one thing, maybe. Probably not.
Well, I mean, because I
It's
think
hard to overcome biology. What you can do is use your biology to your advantage. But
okay. I mean, I think to a certain extent, it's just like when it comes to things of like urges and stuff like that. Yes, like men, like we're gonna have more urges. We're gonna run the spread to seed and stuff like that. Yes, that's gonna be. That's always gonna be. Every single man is gonna go through that problem. However, like, are we at the point where like our urges are us? Like when you just said you started off the podcast saying commitment is holding something greater.
yes,
So like you're holding that commitment greater than your urges.
right.
Like, cause the urges are, I mean, if we're just looking at urges, that nothing separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom. Like lions, tigers, all of them have urges and stuff like that. And yeah, you usually
Bears. You missed the bears.
they succumb to their urges, whereas we are supposed to be.
Sorry.
Whereas we're supposed to be the most evolved of the animal kingdom, so we're supposed to be better than that. So it's like when the fact that we do have this great multifaceted communication, and when we say, hey, we're exclusive, you know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Like you both have a general understanding, and when you go against that, that's when really you're just succumbing to something. I mean, again, have that conversation. You also know that if you know that you're going to, like, you can have that conversation before it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
Not everybody's case isn't like, oh, I just met a girl at a club when I was doing really good and then I just cheated on her. I cheated on the woman I was committed to. That's not every single, like, usually it's like I was at the club and you were already looking for something else. You were already internally seeking something else.
Right.
And so when you get to that place of like, I'm internally seeking, you should then go to your partner and be like, well, this is how I'm feeling.
Yes.
Like and then that's the evolved nature of us like overcoming our biology, not just going on an action, an impulse.
Yes.
Like actually trying to seek to find that. So that's what I meant about overcoming biology.
I gotcha. Sorry, I need to go on a tangent real quick.
Tangent away. Turn the camera just to Blair. This is Blair's tangent moment.
I think it's also really important to normalize marriage counseling. I think that it's incredibly important to do this before you get married and also continue to do it after you get married. That way you can start to address problems almost before they arise, but at least as they arise. And you can address them before they become, well, they're the small things, right? That you can grow with. Ideally, that's what you're doing during counseling. And they never get to this big thing that becomes a divide between you. As long as we're talking about commitment, I think that if you actually really value this commitment between you and this other person, that you probably need to have an unbiased third party to try to see the things that neither of you can because you're in it. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a part of like being human, but I think it's actually sorely needed. It needs to be normalized so that we can actually have more functional, more fulfilling relationships.
So, when we're thinking about like marriage counseling, going to see a therapist, going to see, psychiatrist, psychologist, why is that so stigmatized? Because I think, well, to kind of answer the question within the question, I think people believe it's like needing help. And I think that people really have a problem with like saying, I need help. Like, I don't need help from nobody. Like, I feel like that's a lot of time that can be some of our problem with like, you're putting someone else into your business. Like, I'm bringing someone else into the marriage. It's almost like that's what it feels like. I'm bringing someone else in marriage, whereas we need to be, but it's like, these people
handle our business in-house.
Yeah, it's one of those things. But like, why in society is that the framework that a lot of people have when it comes down to getting help through psychological means?
So this makes me wonder about the difference between cultures, and this is actually something that I admittedly do not know. But it makes me think of the individualism that has been ingrained in Western culture, which is like you have to do everything for yourself. And the moment that you let somebody else do it, you're actually giving some of your power away. And I think that actually is the majority of the stigma, is it's giving the power of your individualism away. And that's something that's ingrained as like utmost important for us. But I would actually argue that it's one of the best ways you can retain your power, because if you are toxically independent.
You said toxically independent?
Yes, which we will discuss at a later podcast. Then you actually can start to not be your best self, would be the best way of saying that. And when you're not your best self, you're automatically losing your power. So one of the best ways to keep your power is to make sure that you're addressing these things that mentally or emotionally can start to make you someone that isn't your best self. And that's how you like can keep your power of your individualism, of who you are, to like the best degree that you can. And I think the same thing can be said for relationships. I know there is a huge stigma of, well, we should be able to talk ourselves and take care of our own issues. And I mean, ideally, maybe that's true. But for one thing, I've had people tell me I have like beautiful perspectives on things. Actually, that's like when people like me, that's typically one of the reasons why it's my views on life that they connect with. But there are things that I am blind to, and in relationships I've had in the past, I've definitely failed them because of things that I couldn't see. And I wonder if maybe we had gone to somebody. I mean, we were really young at the time, but if we had gone to somebody, could we have worked through it and actually salvaged something that had amazing beauty in it, and made it something that was actually even better.
So do you think that, I mean, because you did say like before you get married, like you should go ahead and be having like marriage counseling?
I think so, yeah.
So do you think that like pretty much, hey, I've proposed to her, we start marriage counseling, you continue marriage counseling throughout the entire marriage? So,
for one thing, throughout the entire marriage, I'll answer that part first, yes. So again, ideally, you're getting to know this person and growing with this person the further we go. But there's always the potential for blind spots. There's always the potential for you to lose that being in the moment with this person. And sometimes it takes some work to actually get that back. When you have lost the in the moment part of a relationship, you've lost the most important part of it, in my opinion. It's great to stay committed when you're not in the room, but if you're not actually enjoying being together when you are in the room, that's a major aspect of the relationship that has a huge effect on its prognosis. On the other hand, I think that you should start counseling as soon as possible. So, and what I mean by that is, if you're, at a point where you're like going on this date, going on that date, going on that date, probably don't need marriage counseling. If you get to a certain point with someone where you're like, I actually see this person as someone that I want to be with. As soon as you get to that point and you're both there, I think that's the time. Because that's when you need to start actually like laying out, how do we make this work? It's only at that point where it actually becomes like this important thing in your life that you need. That's where you need commitment.
Yeah.
And what's more committing than actually going to counseling together, which is exposing your raw self to try to actually grow together.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, that would definitely help. Probably a lot of relationships. So should you be going to counseling first? Like individually? Like should or should I start off as like couples counseling? Like
Peggy?
Go to counseling individually and as a group or couple.
Agreed.
Okay. So to play devil's advocate really quick.
Okay.
So you start off marriage counseling. You just have your fiance. You're gonna get married in 6 months, and you agree that once a month or whatever time period this is our marriage counseling like date, and we continue doing that for 10 years into marriage. So, what about the argument of like, are you actually learning how to like deal with your problems? Are you becoming now dependent upon this third person to deal with your problems? Like, because that's like I said, if every single time it's like, okay, I'm having this problem with her, she's having a problem. Okay, we gonna see what our marriage counselor has to say about it. Like, because that would be a dependency that could somewhat develop. It's just like I have to wait for this person to their opinion because they're the expert, and it's like then it starts becoming the moment now is not between you and me and us fighting through this problem together. It becomes now having this third party to help us fight it through on a consistent basis.
So, good point. Good point. What I would say is that if your counselor is not giving you the tools to start, whether it's introspecting or ways of actually connecting and conversating with each other to get to points of resolution, then they aren't doing their job. So, like, and I guess that's another point is like, if you aren't seeing improvement with one counselor, maybe you should switch to another one. It's not necessarily that counseling doesn't work. Maybe that counselor isn't the best one for you, or maybe they actually just aren't a good counselor. For one thing, we all mesh differently. But, and so that goes for both individual counseling as well as couples counseling. So you need to start like having tools, and then you'll start to notice that like you're using these unconsciously, and there's a better feeling within yourself and actually with the person you're with if it's couples counseling. You're able to enjoy the moment a little bit more. You're able to feel more fulfilled, right? And the other side of that, though, right? Like I mentioned before, no matter how good you get at seeing, whether that's an entire situation or the person that's in front of you, there's always going to be blind spots. There's always going to be things that you miss. And I think that we can always benefit from having a different perspective that is mostly impartial. Like whenever I had problems, I came to you because you saw things in a way that I didn't. Yeah. And I was like super logical about it. I was like, this is the only thing that makes sense. And I was right the majority of the time. Yeah. No, like seriously, like you couldn't argue because I had great points, but it didn't matter because logic and emotion is always going to be the more important thing. And I think actually the deeper problem is I wasn't actually trying to connect with her on her emotions. Yeah. I was trying to fight her with logic.
Yeah, and it's not about what happens. It's about how that person feels about what happens.
Yeah. No doubt.
Yeah. So.
No doubt. So, yeah, that's my answer to that.
Yeah. Like I said, it was just devil's advocate, but
yeah.
Okay, so we definitely deviated. See, tangent, whole tangent into.
Okay, now, it was a great tangent.
It was. Okay, so I guess this brings us to next part of your podcast: movie, television, cultural reference on commitment. Where was a commitment in a piece of media that this person had the opportunity to be committed and they didn't commit. It fell apart. Like, or that we maybe rooted for them to be committed.
Yeah.
I have an example for like one where like you wanted them to be committed and they did get committed. I don't have an example yet of.
You don't. Okay, then I'll go first.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen this series, Dexter.
I have not seen this. You've been telling me about that since college.
Really? Dexter. Have you seen Dexter?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So like Dexter broke my heart. Like that like last episode, basically.
I didn't get that far.
Dexter broke your heart.
Dexter broke my heart.
Peggy broke your heart as well.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm about to say this. So basically, Dexter fakes his death in the end, right? And this was after he probably had like 3 or 4 different relationships, like all that actually had like decent aspects, but they failed for one reason or another. Either he killed them or whatever. And that's not a solution.
I don't know, Mike.
But
jokes.
But anyways, he finally like met this one woman that was like, honestly, as far as best I could see it, was his match.
Mm-hmm.
They connected on the deepest level that I saw him connect with anyone, and probably deepest as possible for him. Like he became better, I believe, because of her. And honestly, that's one of the biggest measures of compatibility and rightness of a union that I can kind of measure. It's been a little while since I've seen it, so I can't remember the exact like details of everything now. But basically, something happened with his sister where like she had to sacrifice a lot for him, and he knew that he had caused her a lot of pain. And so he literally faked his death. He gave up that relationship, that basically for him, perfect relationship, and ended up like doing some like grunt work. I don't even know where it was anymore, like Hawaii or somewhere. Probably in Hawaii. But, and it sucked to me, because I was like, you finally found this person that like you can commit to and you can actually be happy. This guy was not a happy guy. He had a ton of issues, and I think he tried, and that's honestly why Dexter is such a lovable character, is because he is trying, and even though he has major flaws, you can still tell that he actually does deeply care about
serial
people.
Killer.
He deeply cares about people. And so it was heartbreaking for me. I hated that ending. It was heartbreaking for me that he finally found this person, and I was like, why? You could have taken her with you or whatever. Actually, I think it was that Deb died. Shit. And he like caused it, right? And so he literally fakes his death and goes away and like deprives himself of this relationship because he's trying to punish himself for it. And I'm like, for one thing, Deb would have wanted you to be happy. Everyone in your life that ever cared about you wanted you happy. And this was how you do it. And this is how you be a better person. There's literally like no downside of this. And you decide to punish yourself. And it was one of the most painful things that I've actually like experienced in a series, because I wanted him to be his best self. And I don't think that he could be without that.
Sounds like reality.
Watch it and let me know what you think.
You're disappointed. Okay, so
Ooh, I feel it.
I saw it in your face. I was like, man, Dexter broke your heart.
Yes, he did.
That's okay, buddy.
So even the men in my life break my heart.
That was funny. So my example is not necessarily a committed to a person. It's committed to a cause. The Joker won.
Oh.
The
Okay.
Joker won. So Harvey Dent, he was committed to being. Did they call him the White Hope?
No.
What did they call him? They called him something like the Harvey Dent. It was something with a hope.
No.
What did they call him? Because he was the White Knight. White Knight. There you go.
I don't know where hope came from.
But I don't know. But they were calling him like, because he was like this justice reform. He was gonna clean up the city. He was gonna put like,
White Knight.
yeah. So they were calling him the White Knight and stuff like that. And he was committed to being a White Knight. And we were rooting for him when Bruce Wayne was going to say he was gonna reveal himself as Batman. When Harvey Dent steps in, I'm Batman, and he gets taken in, we rooted on him because he's like, you're committed to the cause, because the bigger cause is to have this Dark Knight, and you could be the White Knight because you need both knights.
Yes.
You need both knights in order to really get to end crime.
Right.
And then when he allowed the Joker, which again, I don't know how many people wouldn't have been broken from the Joker taking the love of your life away from you, and all the people who are closest to you betraying you in order to get that love of your life taken. Most men would have made that decision, but he wasn't committed to the cause fully, because then at that point he played into the Joker's hands. He played into that, like, when you break someone truly, the cause isn't the issue. That we are animals, like going back to the whole, like, we are the urges. We try to put up this facade that we're not this, but like once you break all this moral hierarchy that we believe we have, because we don't actually have it, once you break it, we become back to animals, and we actually haven't evolved past them. Yeah. And people would be anarchy. And really, the Joker proves this point in Harvey Dent, and Batman proved it. He proved the Joker wrong because he was able to take on what Harvey Dent couldn't take on.
You know what's funny? You just brought a different psychological aspect up to me that I hadn't thought about. Joker is the id. Because Joker is literally just urges. That's what makes him so like chaotic and anarchy and like unexpected. Is because he just goes like with a whim, and he accomplishes it, which is actually the more impressive part. Because we all have whims, and sometimes we go on them, but a lot of times we don't succeed. Joker had a knack for succeeding at his whims. He is the id, and Batman is our conscience.
He's calculated impulse. Sure. Because you think he always has a backup plan. Like even in that scene where he walks into all the gangs have a meeting where all the most dangerous men in the city are there, and he walks in and he tells them what they're gonna do. But he has the bomb. He can blow up the entire place. Yep. So so it's like the impulse of going in and be like, I'm gonna tell you this, and I'm gonna be this person, but then always having that backup plan. That's what most people didn't have. He wanted to get caught.
He had commitment to his whims.
Fair, buddy. Very fair. Okay. I feel like since we were talking about psychology a lot for this one,
it was a heavy psychology episode.
It was a very heavy psychology episode. But what did you learn about yourself in having this conversation?
I learned what I've been talking to Peggy about recently, which is that I need to start making time to actually like go to counseling myself. I highly recommend it, and which is why I need to put my energy and time where my mouth is.
I was going to say the same thing. Thanks, buddy. But that's great that we both came to that conclusion here. I always knew commitment was hard, but I think I think we really dive down into the communication part of commitment, and like the communication is just communicating with two people. It's not even hard. It's just it's damn near impossible. And
that's what takes commitment.
Yeah.
And so I would say effective communication, because everybody is like, what's the most important part of a relationship? Oh, it's communication. I can communicate to you, and you have no idea what I'm saying. And ideally, our definition of communication includes understanding. But we say that, and I don't think we necessarily really read into it. Which is why I put the adjective before that.
Effective.
Or adverb. Adjective. Sorry. I'm sorry, Stumpy. That was my grammar teacher. Anyways. I wonder if she watched the podcast. Anyways. effective communication, which is something that we should all strive for. So in addition to counseling, we should all start taking communication courses so we can better structure the way that we think about things and how we need to say them so that they are well communicated and understood, hopefully, by the other person. And so you can actually gauge whether this other person understood, ask the right questions. That's only when you do that are you going to actually be going in the same direction. I got a lot of claps.
You got a lot of applause today. A lot of applause. Okay, well, yes. Are you going to see a counselor? Like, if not, why not? What's your opinion on counseling? What's your opinion on commitment? What's your opinion on relationships? Like, what's your opinion on, are men more committed, less committed? Are women more committed? Are people just not committed at all?
Maybe we're just animals. Maybe we're all just the Joker.
I mean, sounds about right.
Yeah.
We just don't want to admit it. But,
Exactly.
But whatever your thoughts are, let us know. Comment, like, share, subscribe. If Blair was dropping some gems from a psychological perspective today. Be like, share some of the gems he was dropping. Maybe we all, like I said, maybe we can save a few relationships before they meet those pitfalls and failures. By them like going to see a counselor.
Yes. Exactly. The other thing I want to say is I really appreciate everyone that watches this podcast and has made it to the end of this episode. We appreciate you sticking with us. We appreciate you supporting us. And it means everything that you are watching with us and that you're growing with us. Because I think that's actually literally what that means. If you are watching this with us, I don't think there's a way you can't grow. So we appreciate you being here with us on this journey.
Yes. As always, I'm Enoch.
I'm Blair.